Hello everyone! Welcome to another Whump Wednesday. This time I am fulfilling a request, which I have no idea who asked for it because the comment I had it under disappeared, but it was a request. It was IwaOi with number 10, under which was hiding Animal Attack. CV for blood, violence, and slight gore, I guess. I'm sure you are having an image. It's an Animal Attack. I hope you will enjoy. As always, special thanks to my lovely patrons. You are keeping this channel going. As much as Iwaizumi's words earlier helped to calm his mind down, Oikawa still couldn't get rid of the intrusive images his brain supplied him with whenever he looked up the trail. He knew he was being unreasonable. After all, he couldn't expect Iwaizumi to give up on doing sports or physical activities just because he could get hurt. They both knew the risks living an active life brought. But still. The image of his boyfriend lying motionless on a small ledge that was the only thing standing between him and a certain death under the cliffside was still firmly burned into his memory, always reminding him of how fragile certain things were. And he definitely didn't intend to let anything similar happen again. Not if he could prevent it. Which was one of the reasons he didn't let his eyes stray from Iwaizumi for more than just a few seconds at a time, usually only to check where he was putting his feet. If Iwaizumi noticed, he didn't say anything about it, and in a way, Oikawa was glad for that. Perhaps he was being paranoid, but at least it seemed like Iwaizumi didn't intend to throw it into his face. As if he would ever do that. With a sigh, he sped up a bit to catch up with Iwaizumi's long strides, wondering where his boyfriend was taking all the energy to just speed run the hike like this. Probably because he doesn't have as much activity as before. The thought stunk in his chest, once again reminding him of why he hated the idea of going hiking again, and why he only agreed when Iwaizumi reassured him there were no cliffs on this one. He still had his doubts, of course. After all, cliffs weren't the only danger on Argentinian hiking trails, but at least he was sure he wouldn't have to see the same horrifying image again. Hopefully. Come on, slow down a bit, would you? You have a tired athlete with you, and he isn't having any fun when you run so much ahead. Iwaizumi stopped and turned around, looking at him with a raised eyebrow. Maybe that tired athlete could speak less and walk more. Oikawa huffed, but there was no real bite in Iwaizumi's words, only his usual playfulness, which was now driving Oikawa crazy. He stopped and leaned with his hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. Wasn't this supposed to be a date? You know, being together, enjoying the scenery. I'm not enjoying this race at all. Iwaizumi's face softened. He walked the few meters that separated them down, taking Oikawa's hands in his before giving it a gentle, somewhat reassuring squeeze. We are almost there. That doesn't make me feel much better. You always say, just a bit further, and then it ends up being several kilometers. So how about, we already have most of the way behind us, and there is only a nice path ahead? That sounds better. He looked away, his knees actually going weak when Iwaizumi smiled at him, and hesitantly started to walk again, hoping that Iwaizumi wasn't lying to him. But at least Iwaizumi stayed by his side this time, apparently taking Oikawa's words to heart. Good. But, you know, I'm really glad you agreed to go out together. Oikawa almost stumbled over his feet, the unusual tenderness in Iwaizumi's tone knocking the air out of his lungs for a split second. Not that Iwaizumi didn't speak softly at him, but something about the way he spoke now was different. Almost as if he was hiding that he was afraid of something up until now. Overcome by a sudden urge to surround his boyfriend with all the affection he could give, he wrapped his arms around his waist, stopping both of them in their tracks. Of course I did. We can go out again, anytime, just say a word. I just need you to promise me you'll be careful. Shivers ran through his body when Iwaizumi returned the embrace and nuzzled into the crook of his neck, leaving a kiss in the corner of his mouth. Do you really think I want to forget you again? A weak, involuntary whimper left Oikawa's mouth, the words returning him to the hospital during some of the worst hours of his life. Compared to waiting for whether his boyfriend was going to wake up at all or not, the short memory loss was the better part of it. Even if it meant risking that he couldn't make Iwaizumi fall for him once again. The grip around his shoulders tightened. Hey, I don't want to end up in hospital again either. For both of our sakes. So stop worrying, okay? I promise I won't do anything reckless. You better not. He reluctantly let go, filled with a new determination to finish the hike. Let's go before it starts to rain or something. As you wish. The timing was impeccable. Just as Oikawa thought he was going to spit out his lungs with his last breath, the trees so far surrounding them like some sort of canopy opened, allowing them a beautiful, unobstructed view of the forest and hills under them. All that right behind a small seating area. But as beautiful as the place was, Oikawa's eyes immediately zeroed in on the natural drink cooling mechanism a bit to the side, a happy sigh escaping his mouth when he noticed his favorite juice among the other bottles. Don't forget to pay for it. Oikawa huffed, the coins already in his hand. What do you have me for? Just saying. You've always had sticky fingers. Gasping, very much offended, Oikawa laid his hand over his heart. How dare you accuse me of such things, Hajime? Me, your boyfriend who never did anything against the law. Iwaizumi raised his eyebrow in a silent challenge while he settled comfortably by one of the tables. Oh really? And what was that after graduation, huh? Oikawa looked away to hide the heat creeping up into his face. That was one time and it was Maki's fault, okay? He paused. Wait, why are we even talking about stealing here anyway? This whole thing works on voluntary payment. Yes, but it's in good manners to pay for things, right? Oikawa grumbled under his breath, ostentatiously sitting on the opposite end from Iwaizumi, much to the other's apparent amusement. Not nice, Hajime. Not nice. Iwaizumi snickered and pushed one of the bentos they brought towards him. Come on, don't get pouty now. I was just teasing you. Besides, you should be proud of yourself for making it the whole way here. Just look at the view and enjoy. His smile faltered a bit. Who knows when we will get to do another hike? Oikawa paused, feeling a sting of guilt in his chest. He knew how much Iwaizumi loved hiking ever since they were children, and now he had to wonder if he was being too restrictive lately with his wariness. Caution was one thing, but if it came for the price of limiting his boyfriend's activities, it wasn't worth it. They were adults now, for goodness sake, fully capable of making their own decisions. He flinched when something flicked into his forehead. You are thinking too much. Ouch! Such a prude, Hajime. But it worked, right? Unable to decide if he should play hurt pride or be grateful for how observant Iwaizumi could be, Oikawa focused on the food and view in front of him. In the end, Iwaizumi was right. The view was absolutely stunning, reminding Oikawa of the few trips they made together back in Japan. It was a great background for their lunch, though he would never say it out loud. But even if it was misty, raining, or the view was into a garbage dump, the happy smile on Iwaizumi's face made everything worthwhile. I hope you aren't planning any more walking for today. The chuckle reaching his ears didn't really calm him down as much as he wished. Nah, everything in moderation. You've done great today, so you deserve some rest. Oikawa let out a relieved breath while he tried to ignore the exhaustion slowly settling in his muscles as they made their way back to their car parked at the base of the hill. However, as always, the trip wasn't done until they were at home, and he couldn't believe he managed to forget that the way down was oftentimes even more arduous than the way up. But at least they weren't in any rush now, and Iwaizumi even let him set the pace, for which he was grateful. One could enjoy nature much better that way. Still, he decided to push his luck a bit. He nudged Iwaizumi's shoulder, setting up his sweetest smile. What about some reward? Reward? Yeah, you said I did great, right? So, based on that, I deserve some reward, no? The expression that settled on Iwaizumi's face was both excitement-inducing and sending shivers down his spine at the same time. But in the end, that was exactly what he was going for. If he wasn't going to be able to walk properly the next day, he wanted to at least choose the reason for it. Maybe we can figure something out. But I don't want to hear any complaints later. You brought this upon yourself. Oikawa's grin widened. Do I hear a challenge in your voice? Maybe. What about a bet? Sounds. They both froze in their tracks, the rest of the words forgotten. A low, deep growl echoed through the trees around them, sending chills down Oikawa's spine. What was that? Iwaizumi motioned for him to stay silent and quickly scanned the whole line of trees, his other hand clutching Oikawa's. 100 different panic thoughts ran through Oikawa's head, offering him a heap of crisis scenarios, one worse than the other. He quickly dug around his memory, trying to recall if there were any dangerous animals living in this part of Argentina, but he couldn't find any that would growl. Hajime... Shush. Let's get moving. With that, he grabbed Oikawa's hand even stronger and tugged him along further down the path. Oikawa stumbled forward, his eyes darting around in search of that something he couldn't see, just feel. His heart jumped into his throat when the growling was joined by rustling of leaves, the sound following uncomfortably close to their heels. Then, a dark shadow darted in the corner of his eye. Too fast to recognize, but it was there, he was sure of it. Another growl sounded from among the trees, this time much closer than before. Hajime... I see it. Keep walking, just don't run. That was easier said than done. Every cell of Oikawa's being was telling him to book it down the hill to get away from whatever was causing those sounds, no matter the possible injury from tumbling down. Maybe they could outrun the whatever creature that was stalking them from the shadows. Get to the car before it caught up with them. He was just about to suggest it to Iwaizumi, when a sharp bark from above them froze him in place. His breath hitched in his throat when he spotted the culprit. A large dog stood just a few meters from them, its ears laid flat and canines bared, saliva mixed with white foam dripping down from its mouth. It was crouching down a bit, but even like that Oikawa could see the bones sticking up sharply against its skin. If those bloodshot eyes weren't focused on them, he would feel bad for the poor creature. Like this, however, he stayed completely frozen in place, his blood running cold when another growl coming from their side reached his ears. Another ragged body, too slender to be healthy, crawled out from the tree line, slowly closing in on them. He instinctively gripped Iwaizumi's backpack when the man positioned himself between him and the dogs as a shield, his heart hammering into his chest when he noticed the other dogs salivating foam as well. He flinched when the dogs barked, the sharp sound piercing right through his brain and urging him to move, but his legs refused to listen. The firm grip on his hand snapped him out of the growing panic. Where's your phone? While Iwaizumi's voice seemed calm, Oikawa knew better. Even though it wasn't often he could hear his boyfriend truly alarmed. In my pocket. Good. Give me your backpack and hold on to the phone. When I tell you to run, you run, understood? When you get down, call animal control or something. I can't run faster than dogs. You have... A strangled cry got caught in Oikawa's throat as in the next second, one of the dogs charged forward, the barks and growls mixing into a terrifying combination. Iwaizumi quickly shook off his backpack and swung it at the dog's head. The dog whined and wavered a bit, but then immediately latched onto the backpack. "Go! Now!" Oikawa dropped the backpack and bolted down the slope, praying he didn't step badly or stumble. He could still hear the growling and yapping behind his back, but it didn't seem to get closer. Just when he wanted to rejoice, a realization that he couldn't hear another set of footsteps behind him either drenched him in cold sweat. Instead, a pained outcry rattled with his core, the sound turning his blood into ice. The split second of inattentiveness sent him tumbling down, hissing when his skin scraped against the rough forest path. But that was the least of his worries. He scrambled to his feet and turned around. His heart stopped. Without thinking, he ran back up the hill just as one of the dogs latched onto Iwaizumi's leg, the teeth sinking deep into his flesh, tearing another cry from the man's throat. Panic and fear fueling his movements and clouding his mind, he grabbed the dog by its neck, digging his fingers deep into its remaining muscles. He slammed his fist into the dog's skull, again and again, but the dog didn't budge. In a desperate attempt to make it let go, he stuck his hands in between the jaws and pried with all the strength he could muster. At last, the dog's grip seemed to loosen, but before he could celebrate, a sharp pain shot through his thigh. He could swear he felt his muscles tearing apart when the dog's teeth sank into them and harshly pulled back, the strength knocking him off his already unsteady feet. "Toru!" Another set of teeth dug into his arm. He screamed, feeling like his flesh was set on fire. He tried to pull away, but it only seemed to push the teeth deeper in his bones. The pain and the stomach-curling wet sounds made him nauseous, the deep growls right next to his ear chilling to the marrow of his bones. No longer able to tell where the pain was coming from, he only barely registered how his limbs were being wildly shaken around, and the unnatural warmth now sticking to his skin. As a last desperate attempt, he covered his head with his free arm and pulled his shoulders up to cover his throat. But against the sheer, brutal strength in those jaws, he knew it was a lost fight. Then, above all the growling, sounded another, almost monster-like roar, followed by a high-pitched whining. The pressure tearing his muscles disappeared, leaving just pain and spasms. He stayed lying down, waiting for more onslaught. But nothing of that sort came. Instead, a calloused hand gripped his and carefully pulled it away from his face. He glanced up, a strangled sob tearing from his throat when, even through his blurred vision, he recognized Iwaizumi's face. It was scrunched with pain, but there, with no visible injuries. "Toru! Hey, don't you dare to close your eyes, you giant idiot! Don't you dare!" Oikawa let out a strained chuckle, even the tiny movement feeling as if his body exploded. "So, Kuro Hajime." He didn't get to enjoy the look of relief in Iwaizumi's eyes as a wave of spasm clutched his body, making him twitch and scream. At the very edge of his consciousness, he heard Iwaizumi's choked apologies, the sorries and promises that everything was going to be alright being the only thing keeping him in reality as convulsions and pain surged through his body in waves, one by one and all at once, setting every cell of his being on fire. The events that followed were one big blur. He recalled Iwaizumi talking frantically to someone, more pain coming from somewhere around his legs, and then nothing. No more sounds, no pain, no feeling in his body. And then, as suddenly as the war disappeared, a light appeared again, forcibly pulling him into consciousness. The harsh awakening made him groan, and also want to crawl somewhere underground and not leave for the next few years. He tried to cover his eyes, but the moment he moved, his arms were pushed back. "Please don't move. I might miss the vein if you do." Confused by the unknown voice, he forced his eyes to open properly. The man standing next to him gave him a small smile before leaning down again, focused on something outside of Oikawa's field of vision. Welcome back. Please don't rush with waking up. Take your time. But try not to move too much. We wouldn't want to restrict you. Huh? Unsure what to make out of the man's words, he glanced around, slowly getting his eyes used to the light and the world around him. The room was surprisingly big and full of all kinds of equipment he recalled seeing a lot when he stayed with Iwaizumi in the hospital. Oh. Hospital then. Hajime. Where's Hajime? The man, now on a closer inspection clearly a doctor, let go of his arm and leaned over him, shining a small torch into his eyes. You don't need to worry. Your partner is alright and well. And very adamant about seeing you, might I say. He almost broke the door down when we told him he has to wait in the room. A relief washed over Oikawa, a tiny smile of his own curling his lips. Sounds like him. How bad? Risking sounding unprofessional, it could have been much worse. You both got lucky. It's not uncommon to get out of wild dog's attack with life-threatening injuries. Based on what your partner told us, we gave both of you first rabies shots and we will continue with the treatment to stop the infection as soon as possible. In your case, you have several torn muscles with severe swelling and you lost quite a bit of blood, but nothing that can't be fixed with proper treatment and time. So, we'll keep you here for a few days at least to make sure the rabies infection isn't developing and that your muscles are healing well. Then we can discuss home rest. Oikawa doubted he had ever felt more relieved in his life than in that moment. He followed the doctor's instructions, earning a content nod before he was rolled out of the door and into a room on the other end of the hallway. He couldn't keep the smile from his face when he finally spotted Iwaizumi sitting on one of the hospital beds with an anxious expression on his face, a similar IV to what Oikawa had leading into his arm and his legs secured in a brace. Hey, long time no see. Iwaizumi's expression shifted into something Oikawa had never seen before. Oikawa Toru, you are such an idiot! Oikawa blinked in surprise, though he was absolutely sure there was no anger in his boyfriend's voice, despite the sharp tone. You say that pretty often. Yeah, but now I actually mean it. What were you thinking, fighting rabid dogs with your hands? Oikawa huffed, pushing himself on the bed to comfortably throw Iwaizumi a glare. And what were you doing, huh? I was trying to hold them off. Yeah, with your bare hands and a backpack. You goddamn hero. If I could get up, I would punch you. The next thing he knew was Iwaizumi getting up from the bed despite the pain he must have been in, and crossing the few steps between their beds to lightly smack the back of his head. Ouch! If anyone has the right to punch someone, it's me. Do you know how fucking scared I was? I sent you away for a reason. Yeah, so you could get hurt instead of me. No thanks. Toru! No, forget that. You think I'll let you do that I'll take anything over you getting hurt thing again? Well then, you are horribly mistaken, sir. He stopped to catch his breath, all the talking leaving him tired and his throat itching. But it had to be said. He couldn't let Iwaizumi do anything like that again. Not on his watch. Not in this lifetime. I told you I don't want to see you injured again, didn't I? So stop with this self-sacrificing for my sake. I don't want it. I don't want to be okay when you are injured. Iwaizumi looked like he wanted to argue further, but then just closed his mouth again and sighed, his face scrunching in pain as he pulled a chair for himself. Doesn't change that I was beyond myself with fear for you. He gave Oikawa a stern look, squeezing his hand. Don't ever do anything like this again. Promise me. Will you promise me too? Yes. Smiling, Oikawa ran his thumb over Iwaizume's knuckles and relaxed into the bed. Alright. Pinky promise? What are we, 5? Come on. Iwaizume rolled his eyes, but held up his pinky, linking it with Oikawa's.